Detail, inch hut. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms. Detail, half left and half right. At ease. This has come to be quite an occasion here tonight, and we're very glad that all of you could come. Mayor Kutcher, Council Member Mark Neal, we want to thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests and police colleagues, welcome to the 2007 awards ceremony of the Port Huron Police Department to officially recognize police officers and citizens for their personal contribution to the quality of life in our city. Before we begin our awards ceremony, I'd let us all observe a moment of silence for all fallen law enforcement colleagues who have died in the line of duty. Sometimes their contribution is demonstrated by heroic acts during the apprehension of criminals, the solution of crimes, and the saving of lives. Sometimes the contribution is demonstrated in citizen support of the police department in accomplishing its many goals. What is readily apparent is that all of today's award recipients really care about other people and are willing to give of themselves to the city of Port Huron. On behalf of Mayor Kutcher, the council members of our city and the Port Huron Police Department, I salute all of you and convey my deep respect and gratitude for the civic contribution each of you have made. Let us celebrate our award recipients and strengthen our appreciation for them, for they have demonstrated the best traits of human nature: courage over non-involvement, caring for their fellow citizens, service over selfishness, and responsibility over indifference. Mr. Kutcher, would you like to make a couple of comments?
Thank you, Chief. On behalf of the Port Huron City Council, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. It really is a special evening. We get an opportunity to thank our members of the Port Huron Police Department and the citizens who have participated to make this a better community and a safer community. I'm particularly proud tonight that there are over 20 citizen recipients of awards. I think that's absolutely great. It speaks well for our community. Thank you again for coming. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. I'm Lieutenant Jim Jones of the Police Department here. You know, I always take a lot of pride at these ceremonies, standing before the officers when they're recognized. This year I'm very honored and humbled to be able to present the citizens of the community that are going to be recognized. We all take an oath and get paid to go out there and serve the public. The citizens, just merely by being in the right place at the right time and being in a position to take an act, do on their own merit, and we certainly recognize them with great honor for what they've done. We've got a lot of awards to give out tonight and a lot of recognition, so this is going to take some time. So we're going to try to get through this as soon as we can, or as quickly as we can. We're going to start with the Citizens Award. The first awards we're going to give are for the Citizen Certificates, and these are awarded to private citizens who have made a substantial contribution to law enforcement, have materially supported the department in furthering its progress or obtaining its objectives, or done any other acts deemed worthy of consideration. And for the Civilian Award number 1 Citizen Certificate, we'd like to have George Streisenreiter come on up here.
Congratulations, Mr. Streisenreiter.
On May 22nd, hold on, George. This is your 5 minutes here. Okay. On May 22nd, 2006, at 6:30 p.m., Mr. Streisenreiter was at his home when he heard a young woman screaming. He looked out and observed the woman running through the yard. He went to see what the problem was and found that the neighbor's house at 3439 Maple Street was on fire. Mr. Streisenreiter made sure the woman was okay. He then investigated the fire and found that the kitchen of the home was engulfed in flames. Mr. Streisenreiter ran to his home, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and went back to the fire. He was able to extinguish most of the fire prior to the arrival of the fire department, but doing so, he suffered smoke inhalation. Mr. Streisenreiter is commended for his substantial contribution to this community. Civilian Award number 2, Citizen Certificate, is awarded to Edward Weaver and Crystal Ganther. On July 31st, 2006 at 11:30 p.m., dispatch received a 911 call regarding a breaking and entering in progress at Thompson Interior Store at 619 Huron Avenue. Edward Weaver observed a suspect exiting the rear door of the business carrying a plasma television. Mr. Weaver advised his neighbor, Crystal Ganther, what was happening and asked her to call the police. Mr. Weaver then confronted the suspect, causing the suspect to drop the television and flee. Mr. Weaver chased the suspect but lost sight of him. He did, however, get a physical description of the suspect and directed officers to the location of the stolen property. If not for the quick actions of Edward Weaver and Crystal Ganther, the suspect would have escaped with the stolen property. Thanks, Dave. Civilian Award number 3, Citizen Certificate, awarded to Christina Farnsworth. Christina Farnsworth has been a domestic violence advocate in St. Clair and Macomb counties for nearly 10 years. In recent years, Christina has been employed with Safe Horizons in Port Huron. During 2006, Christina worked tirelessly with the courts, prosecutor's office, and the Port Huron Police Department's Special Victims Unit in assisting victims of domestic violence through the adjudication process. Christina has also given hours of free training to local law enforcement officers on domestic violence and has provided hours of instructions to teens through the high schools in dating violence and sexual assault prevention. Ms. Farnsworth is commended for her substantial contribution to law enforcement. I might add on that also, Christina is going to be leaving St. Clair County here. She just accepted a job with the Sarasota County Sheriff's Department down in Florida. So, Chris, we'll miss you a whole lot. Citizen's Commendation. These are different awards awarded to a private citizen for actions which result in the apprehension of criminals or the solution of a major crime. The first Civilian Award, number 4, Citizen's Commendation, awarded to Cheryl Moses, who is not here. Actually, Cheryl was in the Chief's office a couple of days ago and was presented her award, but I'd still like to talk to you about her. On January 1st, 2006, Cheryl Moses observed a suspicious person in the area of Lapeer and 12th Street. She watched the man and saw him going onto a porch of 1136 Lapeer. She then observed him steal a bike off the porch and leave the area with another subject. She called dispatch and reported the crime. She then gave a description of the suspect and the stolen property. On arrival, the responding officers got additional information from Ms. Moses, which helped them locate the stolen property, find the suspect, and make an arrest. The stolen property was later returned to the owner. If not for Ms. Moses' action, the crime would have most likely gone unsolved. The next Civilian Award, number 5, Citizen's Commendation, is awarded to Joseph Covey. Is Joseph here? Well, he's certainly worthy of mention, so I'll continue on with what happened here. On January 14th, 2006, at 8:08 p.m., Joseph Covey observed a subject attempting to gain entry into his apartment through a broken window. Mr. Covey yelled at the suspect, which caused the suspect to flee. Mr. Covey chased the suspect and caught him about a block away. Mr. Covey then escorted the suspect back to his residence, where he waited for the police to arrive. The suspect was taken into custody and charged with home invasion. Mr. Covey is to be commended for his contribution to good law enforcement. Civilian Award number 6, Citizen Commendation, awarded to William Rome. Mr. Rome? On November 26, 2006, at 3:40 p.m., officers were dispatched to the 2600 block of 11th Street for a call of illegal drug activity involving a vehicle. On arrival, the officers approached the vehicle and one of the subjects fled on foot. One officer began chasing the subject for several blocks, but then lost sight of him. The chase was witnessed by Mr. Rome, who offered his vehicle to assist the officer in the pursuit. The officer then got into Mr. Rome's vehicle and began looking for the subject again. They located the subject near 13th Street and Mason, where the officer was able to arrest the subject. Mr. Rome then waited to make sure the officer had secured the subject and left the area not wanting or seeking any gratitude. Mr. Rome is commended for his willingness to assist an officer in need and help to contribute to the cause of good law enforcement. Civilian Award number 7, Citizens Commendation, awarded to Dennis Brennan and Robert Hall. On December 15, 2006, at 12:43 p.m., Dennis Brennan and Robert Hall, who are both City of Port Huron DPW employees, observed 2 suspicious persons near the Pepsi plant in Jerry's Distributing at 16th and Bancroft. They called dispatch and reported what they were seeing and watched the subjects until officers arrived. The juvenile suspect was stopped and arrested by the Sheriff's Department, but the adult suspect fled from Officer Rumley. Officer Rumley pursued the subject and was able to tackle him over the fence and arrest him. In the process, Officer Rumley was injured. Officer Coleman continued the investigation and found that these 2 subjects were stealing from the Pepsi plant, and the adult suspect was a parole absconder. Dennis Brennan and Robert Hall are commended for their contribution to good law enforcement. Civilian Award number 8, Citizens Commendation, awarded to Sean Orr, Robert Churchill, and Paul Moretz. On December 31st, 2006, at 12:15 a.m., an armed robbery occurred at the Rich gas station at 24th and Oak Street. Just as the suspect was exiting the store, Sean Orr was walking into the store and realized the clerk had just been robbed. Sean Orr followed the suspect outside and observed him run around the building. He then heard a gunshot. Mr. Orr's friend Robert Churchill and Paul Moretz, who were in the vehicle in the parking lot, were directed to follow the suspect's vehicle by Mr. Orr. The suspect fled in a vehicle eastbound on Oak Street and then northbound on 10th Street at a high rate of speed. Mr. Churchill and Mr. Moretz followed the vehicle until patrol units became involved. The suspect then led Officer Finney on a vehicle pursuit, which ended with the suspect crashing into a pair of cement pillars. The suspect then fled on foot, and after a short chase, Officer Finney apprehended him. The stolen money was recovered, and the suspect was found to have had an accidental self-inflicted gunshot wound. If not for the contributions of these 3 citizens to help the responding officers, this criminal would have been most likely escaped. Thank you. Okay, the next award is the Life-Saving Awards. These are awarded to or for saving a human life, intended for all individuals directly responsible for saving a human life. And the next one is awarded to Citizen Life Saving Award number 9, Michelle Lynch, Edward Jacobs, and Hope Zick Powell. On October 3rd, 2006, the Port Huron swim team was participating in a swim meet at Sterling Heights High School. During the warm-up swim, one of the Sterling Heights swimmers did not resurface after making a flip turn. The Port Huron swim team coach, Hope Zick Powell, and assistant coach Edward Jacobs pulled the swimmer from the water. Michelle Lynch, member of the Port Huron swim team and City of Port Huron Recreation Department certified lifeguard, witnessed what was happening. The swimmer was unconscious and not breathing. Ms. Lynch advised Coach Zick Powell that she could perform CPR with her assistance. Ms. Lynch began CPR and revived the swimmer. The swimmer was later airlifted to the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor, where the doctors implanted a device to prevent future heart failure. The 3 individuals are commended for their part in saving the young girl's life. The next one is Civilian Award number 10, Citizens Life Saving, to Nicholas Podgers, Aaron Christensen, and Alex Christensen. On December 20th, 2006, at 3:59 a.m., dispatch received a call of a house fire at 3216 Military Street with the homeowners trapped on a balcony. Nicholas Podgers was spending the night at a friend's house nearby and heard screams for help. Mr. Podgers noticed smoke coming out from the residence, so called for his friend Aaron and Alex Christensen to help him. The 3 young men ran over to the fire, put a ladder up to the balcony, and helped the 2 residents escape. One of the victims told investigators that if it had not been for the action of these 3 young men, the end result of the fire could have been tragic. These 3 individuals are commended for part in saving the 2 humans' lives. Civilian Award number 12, Citizens Medal awarded to Juan and Mary Almendrez. Sorry about that, Almendrez. On January 14, 2006 at 3:35 p.m., Juan Almendrez was inside the Rich gas station at 1301 Military Street when he observed a subject come into the store, reach over the counter, and steal money out of the cash register. Mr. Almendrez, seeing this robbery, did grab the suspect who was attempting to flee the store. Mr. Almendrez then struggled with the suspect and wrestled him to the floor. Mr. Almendrez's wife, Mary Almendrez, who was waiting outside for her husband, came in to check for him because he was taking longer than normal. When she walked in, she observed her husband attempting to hold the suspect down. Mr. Almendrez then directed her to assist him. Mr. and Mrs. Almendrez then held the suspect until the responding officers arrived and took the suspect into custody. It was not until the officers arrived that they realized the suspect was armed with a knife. Mr. and Mrs. Almendrez should be commended for this bravery and valuable service to law enforcement. And that's all I have for the Citizens Awards. I'm going to turn it over to Captain Porritt for the Officers Awards.
Thank you. This section is called the Field Services Awards, and they're presented mainly to law enforcement personnel, whether they be from our agency or others. The first that we're going to do real quickly is the Longevity Award, and this is awarded to individuals who've completed 5 years of service. So each 5-year increment, we announce their names. They get their award at their respective briefings, but at least we can recognize their time on the job. The first group are the 25-year awards, which I think I'm the only one here from that group. Me, Sergeant Diana Tramsky, and Sergeant Scott Van Sickle. The next is just one single person for the 20-year award is Communications Supervisor Melinda Strang. Next group are 15-year employees, Sergeant Joseph Platzer, Sergeant Scott Pike, Detective Marcy Kewen, Traffic Safety Officer Tom Rudicelli, Officer Karen Brisby, and Officer Mark Malott. Next group are the 10-year awards, Sergeant Joel Wood, Officer Ernesto Fanton, and Officer Keith Merritt. And the last group, the 5-year award, Officer David Conley, Officer James Gilbert, Officer Steve Harrington, Officer Jennifer Sly, Parking Enforcement Officer Rick Cross, and Communications Officer Eric Overholt. And now we'll start on the awards. The first is a Certificate of Commendation. In this award, the Certificate of Commendation are based on letters written by the employee's immediate supervisor that recognize a specific act. First award, I don't believe anyone is here for it, so we'll just read it. On December 15th, it's for Officer Thomas Rumley, Officer Brian Coleman, and St. Clair County Sheriff Lieutenant Matt Paulus. On December 15th, 2006, at 12:43 p.m., Dennis Brennan and Robert Hall, who are City of Port Huron DPW employees, observed 2 suspicious persons near the Pepsi plant and Jerry's Distributing at 16th and Bancroft. They called dispatch and reported that what they were seeing and watched the subjects until the officers arrived. The juvenile suspect was stopped and arrested by St. Clair County Sheriff Lieutenant Matt Paulus, but the adult suspect fled from Officer Rumley. Officer Rumley pursued the suspect and was able to tackle him as they were going over a fence and arrested him. In the process, Officer Rumley was injured. Officer Coleman continued the investigation and found that the 2 subjects were stealing from the Pepsi plant, and the adult suspect was a parole absconder. Officer Rumley, Coleman, and Lieutenant Paulus are commended for their actions. The next Certificate of Commendation are awarded to Shelley Pavlinack, Lynn White, Karen Kirscher, Jennifer Leach, Jillian Luke, and Sarah Jane Herman. During 2006, the Port Huron Police Department had a 5% increase in police reports over 2005. Included in this increase was a 15% increase in Class 1 crimes, which included a dramatic increase in armed robberies and arson. This all led to a tremendous increase in the workload for the entire clerical staff. Not only was the workload increased, but time was a factor in many of the cases, requiring the staff to work under added pressure. The clerical staff worked tirelessly throughout the entire year to ensure that the work was done in a timely fashion, as well as completing many other responsibilities, including sex offender registration, Freedom of Information Act requests, gun registrations, and general public assistance. The entire staff should be commended for their valuable service. The next award is for administrative excellence. It's awarded to those personnel who individually or otherwise perform an administrative duty or assignment in an exceedingly masterful and skillful manner. First one is awarded to Sergeant Joseph Platzer. In an effort to increase the quality, efficiency, and to reduce the cost of mandated and necessary training, police training, Sergeant Platzer developed a plan to institute a Port Huron Police Department in-service training academy. Sergeant Platzer proposed that the training, which used to take place throughout the year, could be consolidated into a one-week period. In the proposal, he had designed a schedule consisting of 14 different subject areas and had coordinated a cadre of instructors for the academy. Sergeant Platzer was able to design the academy in a way that it made it possible for every officer to attend without sacrificing police services to the city. This was all done at a great personal time and effort by Sergeant Platzer. Through his efforts and planning, department personnel have received superior training in 2006 and 2007 at a reduced cost to the taxpayers through the reduction in overtime and that is required to conduct this training. And I might add, we just finished the 2007 training session, and the instructors have already gotten together and met, and they're in the process of planning the 2008 training. So it's been a great asset to the department. Thank you, Joe. Next award, Administrative Excellence, is awarded to Communications Officer Jeanette Thompson. The Communication Training Operations Manual has been out of date for some time, and due to staffing issues, it was difficult to find time to update it. Officer Thompson took it upon herself to handle this task and update the entire manual. To do this, she searched for missing data, integrated the manual with details from the new communications equipment, and retyped the entire manual. In order to complete this project, Officer Thompson used both her work and personal time. The new manual is more user-friendly for both the trainer and the trainee. Officer Thompson showed a great deal of initiative and dedication in completing this project and is commended for her commitment to the efficient operation of the Communications Center. The next group of awards are unit citations, which are awarded to 2 or more persons who in the line of duty perform an outstanding service to the department or community. The first unit citation is awarded to Officers Brian Carton, James Gilbert, Nicholas Godwin, Brian Kerrigan, Chris Smith, Detective John Stewart, Detective David Segi, Sergeant Scott Van Sickle, Communications Officer Bill Fox, and Antoine LaPratte. On February 21st, 2006 at 6:17 p.m., officers responded to an armed robbery call that had just occurred at the Citgo gas station on Pine Grove. Dispatch was able to obtain a description of the suspect and relate it to responding officers. Officer, now Detective Stewart, began searching the area for the suspect and did observe a subject matching the description come out of the Grove Mall dollar store. Officer Stewart stopped and detained the suspect. Another officer brought the witness over for a show-up at the scene, and the suspect was positively identified. The suspect was taken into custody. Officers then continued to search and located the knife used in the robbery. The officers, detectives, and communications officers displayed a great deal of teamwork, which ultimately led to the apprehension of a dangerous criminal, and are commended for their actions. Next is a unit citation awarded to officers Jeremy Young and Keith Merritt. On February 23, 2006 at 5 p.m., the owner of a stolen car called to report to dispatch that she had located her car at the arbors of St. Clair Apartments. She advised that a lone male was in the car. Officer Young responded to the area and observed the vehicle now traveling into the Village Manor apartment complex. Upon seeing the patrol car, the suspect abruptly parked the car and fled on foot. Officer Young chased the suspect into the Golden Crest Apartments, where Officer Merritt was waiting to intercept the foot chase. He ran in the direction of Officer Merritt. Officer Merritt was able to tackle the suspect and arrest him. The officers are commended for their teamwork in recovering a stolen car and apprehending the suspect. Next unit citation is for Officers Grafton Sharp, James Gilbert, Jeremy Young, Chris Bean, and Sergeant Scott Van Sickle. On May 18, 2006 at 10:35 p.m., officers responded to a carjacking of a cab driver that had just occurred in the 1300 block of Howard. Officer Sharp responded to the call and found the cab driver had been assaulted and carjacked by a male and female. The cab driver told Officer Sharp that he had began feeling threatened while driving the suspects to their destination and decided he was going to flee from the vehicle. He stopped the cab, took off his seatbelt, and started to remove the key. The male suspect reached over the seat and started to choke the driver. The cab driver bit the suspect's arm and was able to escape. Suspects then stole the cab. A short time later, Officer Gilbert recovered the stolen cab. Officers then conducted a follow-up investigation, located a witness. Through the witness, a statement Officer Sharp was able to develop a suspect and location. Officers went to the location, verified the information, took the suspect into custody. Detective, now Sergeant Van Sickle, conducted a follow-up interview with the female suspect. Through the information, they were able to determine the identity of the male suspect and discovered stolen property, and valuable evidence was obtained. These officers are commended for their outstanding teamwork in bringing this dangerous suspects into custody. Next unit citation are awarded to Officers Jason Barna, Eric Krikorian, Lee Heighton, Keith Merritt, Chad Smith, Detective David Segi, Detective John Stewart, Sergeant Joseph Platzer, Sergeant William Trout, Marysville Police Department, and K-9 Atlas. On August 26, 2006, at 1:10 a.m., the clerk at the Clark gas station on Lapeer was brutally attacked and robbed by 3 suspects. Detective Loxton responded to the scene and found a terrified victim. Detective Loxton obtained a description of the suspect from the victim as well as a digital surveillance video from the store's security camera. The night shift officers as well as K-9 Atlas searched the area for the suspect but were unable to locate him. The surveillance video was shown to the road patrol officers at the morning briefing. Officer Barna went to his assigned town south beat and started patrolling and did locate the suspects in the 900 block of Howard. Backup units were called, officers were able to identify and arrest all 3 subjects from this violent robbery. The officers are commended for their unit's outstanding teamwork and performance. The next unit citation is awarded to Officer Jason Barna. Okay, hold on, got the wrong page. Officers Chris Bean, Brian Carton, Karen Rickert, Ryan Minesberg, David Conley, Karen Brisby, Keith Merritt, Lee Heighton, Communications Officers Bill Fox, Larissa Thayer, Sergeant Diana Tramsky, and Sergeant Joseph Platzer. On September 13, 2006 at 2:31 a.m., dispatch received a call to the 1500 block of Miller for a suicidal man armed with a shotgun. The officers responded and set a perimeter. While they're en route, communications officers Fox and Thayer attempted to convince the suspect to put the gun down and come out of the house. At one point during the initial call, the communications officers did hear the sound of a racking shotgun. The Special Response Team and Crisis Negotiations Unit were called out. Officer Brisby was the first negotiator on the scene and was able to talk the man out of the house, where he was safely taken into custody. The officers are commended for their teamwork. They used excellent communication skills and coordinated all their efforts in the evacuation of an apartment building in an outstanding manner. The next unit citation, Officer Laura Phillips, Chris Smith, Nicholas Godwin, Jennifer Sly, Jacqueline Jaros, Detective Dwayne Loxton, Sergeant Scott Van Sickle, Communications Officers Antoine LaPratte and Larissa Thayer. During the night shift of October 2nd and 3rd of 2006, 2 armed robberies of convenience stores occurred. The robberies were believed to have been committed by the same suspects. Patrol officers began paying special attention to the convenience stores in case the suspect struck again. Officer Finney was watching the 7-Eleven store on 10th Street. He observed a suspicious vehicle driving erratically in the area and decided to pursue it. Unknown to Officer Finney at the time was that the occupants of the vehicle had just robbed the 7-Eleven store. Officer Finney chased the vehicle and eventually stopped it in the 900 block of 9th Street and took the driver into custody. The passenger fled from the vehicle, but through a collaborative effort by Detective Loxton and the officers of Platoon 3, the passenger and a 3rd suspect were identified, arrested, and eventually charged with 3 armed robberies that occurred that night. These officers are commended for their tremendous effort and teamwork that brought these dangerous individuals to justice. Next unit citation is awarded to Officers Laura Phillips, Chris Smith, Nicholas Godwin. Hold on, am I reading the right one again? Somehow I got too many pages. No, that's the same one again.
Lionsburg's in this one.
Here we go. Got it, number 11. Sorry, folks. Officer Chris Bean, Matthew Finney, Nicholas Godwin, Adrian Minesburg, Ryan Minesburg, Chris Smith, Communication Officers Lisa France and Larissa Thayer.
See, I knew you had to be up there.
On August 21st, 2006 at 1:44 a.m., dispatch received a call of an armed robbery of a cab driver in the area of 9th and Howard. Communications Officers France and Larissa Thayer, immediately relayed information of the crime and the suspect description to the responding officers. On arrival, officers canvassed the area on foot looking for the suspect and additional information. During the course of the investigation, Officer Adrian Minesburg conducted an interview with a witness that helped identify the suspect and his location. Officers Bean and Godwin investigated the lead, responded to the suspect's location, and arrested him. Later, Officer Bean conducted an interview with the suspect who gave a full confession. These officers are commended for their teamwork and outstanding performance. Next unit citation awarded to Officers Matthew Finney, James Gilbert, Jacqueline Jaros, Nicholas Godwin, Dave Conley, Jennifer Sly, Eric Kokorian, Grafton Sharp, Sergeant Joel Wood, Communications Officers Antoine LaPratte and Larissa Thayer. On December 31st, 2006 at 12:15 a.m., an armed robbery occurred at the Rich gas station at 24th and Oak. Just as the suspect was exiting the store, a citizen, Sean Orr, was walking into the store and realized the clerk was just robbed. Sean Orr followed the suspect outside and observed him run around the building. He then heard a gunshot. Mr. Orr's friends, Robert Churchill and Paul Moretz, followed the suspect vehicle until losing sight of it near the 10th Street Bridge. Officer Finney intercepted the vehicle near 10th Avenue and Whipple. The suspect fled from Officer Finney, and a vehicle pursuit began, which ended with the suspect crashing into a pair of cement pillars on Congress Street. The suspect fled on foot. After a short chase, was apprehended by Officer Finney. Through a coordinated effort by all the listed officers, the stolen money, additional evidence was recovered, and the suspect was charged with armed robbery and fleeing and eluding. These officers are commended for their unit's outstanding performance by taking the dangerous suspect into custody. Next unit citation, Officers Matt Finney, Jennifer Sly, Grafton Sharp, Mark Malott, Detective Stewart, Detective Melissa McBride, Detective Loxon, Sergeant Van Sickle, Sergeant Joel Wood, and Sergeant Jeff Baker. On April 5th, 2006, officers were dispatched to an armed robbery in the 2100 block of 10th Street. Upon arrival, the responding officers found that 2 senior citizens had been robbed at gunpoint after they allowed a male and female suspect to enter their homes to use the phone. The victims stated that the suspects told them they needed to use the phone because their car had broken down. When they got inside, they threatened to shoot the male and demanded money. The male suspect then pistol whipped the male victim in the head and the woman in the arm. The suspects then fled. Through an intense investigation, the 2 suspects were developed and later identified in a photo lineup. A few days later, the female suspect was arrested. She admitted to her involvement in the robbery and said she did it for the need for her cocaine addiction. A few months later, the male suspect was arrested as a result of a capture hotline tip. These officers should be commended for their outstanding work in bringing these dangerous suspects to justice. And I think this is the last unit citation. Officers Mark Malott, Ernesto Fanton, Detective Brian Georgia, Detective David Segi, Sergeant Jeff Baker, and Special Agent William Osborne, the Department of Homeland Security. On May 24, 2006, Officer Malott responded to a call of a suspected criminal sexual conduct case involving a 5-year-old girl, with the suspect being the child's daycare worker. After the initial report, Detective Georgia was assigned the case. He then conducted an extensive investigation and revealed 4 other suspects. As a result of the investigation, officers served a search warrant at the suspect's residence and recovered evidence which included the suspect's computer. The computer was examined by Special Agent Osborne, who found numerous child pornographic images on the computer. As a result of the outstanding police work, the child predator pled guilty to 3 counts of child sexual abusive material or activity and is serving 7 to 20 years in prison. The next group of awards are Distinguished Service Awards. They're awarded for outstanding performance in the line of duty or for consistent exemplary performance during the past 12 months. The action need not involve exposure to physical danger, but must involve unusual thoroughness, conscientiousness, determination, and initiative. The first Distinguished Service Award is to Detective John Stewart. On February 21, 2006, officers responded to an armed robbery call that had just occurred at the Citgo gas station on Pine Grove. Dispatch was able to obtain a description of the suspect and relayed it to the responding officers. Officer, now Detective Stewart, began searching the area for the suspect and did observe a subject matching the description come out of the Grove Mall dollar store. Officer Stewart stopped and detained the subject. The officer then brought a witness to the location for a show-up which positively identified the suspect. Officer Stewart took the suspect into custody and conducted an interview and obtained a full confession to the crime. Officer, now Detective Stewart, is commended for the outstanding performance of duty. The next Distinguished Service Award, Sergeant Scott Van Sickle, Officer Grafton Sharp, and Officer James Gilbert. On May 18, 2006 at 10:35 p.m., officers responded to a carjacking of a cab driver that had just occurred in the 1300 block of Howard. Officer Sharp responded to the call and found the cab driver had been assaulted and carjacked by a male and female. The cab driver told Officer Sharp that he began to feel threatened while driving the suspects to their destination and decided to flee the vehicle. He stopped the cab, took off his seatbelt, and tried to remove the ignition key. The male suspect tried to stop the driver, reached over the seat, and began choking him. The cab driver bit the suspect's arm and was able to escape. The suspect then stole the cab. A short time later, the cab was recovered by Officer Gilbert. Officers conducted a follow-up investigation and located witnesses. Through the witnesses' statement, Officer Sharp was able to develop a suspect and his location. The officers went to the location and verified the information and took the suspect into custody. Detective, now Sergeant Van Sickle, conducted a follow-up interview with the female. Through the information gained in that interview, the male suspect's true identity was discovered, stolen property was recovered, and valuable evidence was obtained. Sergeant Van Sickle, Officer Sharp, and Officer Gilbert are to be commended for their outstanding performance of duty. Next Distinguished Service Award is Officer Jason Barna. I don't think Jason's here tonight. On August 6, 2006 at 1:10 a.m., clerk of the Clark gas station on Lapeer was brutally attacked and robbed by 3 suspects. Officers responded to the scene and found a terrified victim. The reporting officer was able to obtain a description of the suspects from the victim as well as digital surveillance video from the store's security camera. Officer Barna, who was assigned to work the next day shift, viewed the images of the suspects from the surveillance video at briefing. Officer Barna went to his assigned Town South beat and started patrolling for the suspects. During his travels, Officer Barna patrolled in the 900 block of Howard and observed a male subject, and upon seeing him, immediately recognized him as one of the suspects from the surveillance video. Backup units were called to the scene and officers were able to identify and arrest all 3 suspects in this violent robbery. Officer Barna is commended for his diligent efforts, keen observations, and outstanding performance of duty. Next Distinguished Service Award, Officer Ryan Minesberg. On October 23, 2006 at 8:29 p.m., 3 men were fishing at the foot of Rollins Street when they were robbed at gunpoint and assaulted by 2 men. The reporting officer obtained descriptions of the suspects, but patrol officers working that night could not locate the suspects. A second robbery occurred later at the Legends Bar, and it was believed to be committed by the same suspects. The next day at 4:50 p.m., Officer Minesberg, who was off duty, was traveling northbound on Pine Grove in his personal vehicle when he observed the 3 men near the intersection of Pine Grove and Hancock. Two of the men fit the description of the suspects and were in the same area as the Legends Bar robbery. Officer Minesberg called for backup from the road patrol officers who were able to identify and arrest the suspects. The suspects later confessed to the robberies. Officer Minesberg is to be commended for being ever vigilant in the performance of his duties. Next Distinguished Service Award is for Officer Matthew Finney. On December 31, 2006, at 12:15 a.m., an armed robbery occurred at the Rich gas station at 24th and Oak. Just as the suspect was exiting the store, Sean Orr was walking into the store and realized the clerk had been robbed. Sean Orr followed the suspect outside and observed him run around the building. He then heard a gunshot. Mr. Orr's friends, Robert Churchill and Paul Moretz, who were in a vehicle in the parking lot, were directed to follow the suspect vehicle. The suspect fled in a vehicle eastbound on Oak Street and then northbound on 10th. Mr. Churchill and Mr. Moretz followed the vehicle until losing sight of it near the 10th Street Bridge. Officer Finney, who was working the North End beat, headed to the area and intercepted the vehicle at 10th and Whipple. The suspect led Officer Finney on a vehicle pursuit which ended when the suspect crashed into a pair of cement pillars. The suspect fled on foot. After a short chase was apprehended by Officer Finney. The stolen money was recovered and the suspect was found to have an accidental self-inflicted gunshot wound. Officer Finney is commended for his outstanding performance of duty in bringing this dangerous suspect into custody. Jim, is Marcy here? Okay. The next award, neither of the two detectives are here. I know Detective George is up north at a school. It's for Detective Brian Georgia and Detective Marcy Huron. On July 28, 2006, Detective Georgia, working in conjunction with a multi-state criminal sexual conduct investigation with the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, conducted a search warrant on North Boulevard in Port Huron to investigate a suspect that was sexually assaulting 2 male victims and broadcasting the assaults with his web camera on an internet chat room to several other individuals. During the investigation, Detective Georgia located a second suspect involved in the molestations. Detective Huron assisted in the investigation by using a forensic protocol to obtain a full statement from the victim. As a result of the thorough and complete investigation involving multiple agencies, the 2 suspects are currently serving sentences ranging from 6 to 40 years. Detective Georgia and Huron are to be commended for their outstanding performance of duty. The next Distinguished Service Award is for Detective Brian Georgia. On May 24, 2006, Officer Malott responded to a call of a suspected criminal sexual conduct case involving a 5-year-old girl, with the suspect being the child's daycare worker. After the initial report, Detective Georgia was assigned the case. He then conducted an extensive investigation and revealed 4 other suspects. As a result of the investigation, officers served a search warrant at the suspect's residence and recovered evidence which included the suspect's computer. The computer was examined by Special Agent Osborne and found numerous child pornographic images on the computer. As a result of the outstanding police work, this child predator pled guilty to 3 counts of child sexual abuse of material and activity and is serving 7 to 20 years in prison. Detective Georgia is to be commended for his outstanding performance. The next group are Meritorious Service Awards. They were awarded for outstanding performance of duty under unusual or difficult conditions. The action need not involve the exposure to physical danger, but must involve the protection of life and property, or involve unusual thoroughness, conscientiousness, determination, and initiative. The first Meritorious Award is awarded to Officer Matt Finney. On October 3rd, 2006 at 2:33 a.m., Officer Finney was working his assigned beat when, at his own initiative, he set up surveillance at the 7-Eleven convenience store because there had already been 2 other armed robberies of convenience stores that night. Officer Finney observed a suspicious vehicle driving erratically in the area and decided to pursue it. Unknown to Officer Finney at the time, the occupants of the vehicle had just robbed the 7-Eleven store. Officer Finney chased the vehicle and eventually was able to stop it in the 900 block of 9th Street. When stopped, both the driver and the passenger exited the vehicle. Officer Finney also exited his vehicle and ordered the suspects to stop at gunpoint. The driver stopped, but the passenger ran on. Officer Finney then moved in to arrest the driver. The driver briefly struggled with Officer Finney, but Finney was able to control and arrest the suspect. Through the subsequent investigation, 2 other suspects were identified and arrested and eventually charged with all 3 armed robberies that occurred that night. If not for Officer Finney's initiative, keen observation, and quick actions, these dangerous individuals would not have been caught and these crimes would have gone unsolved. The next Meritorious Service Award is for Detective Dwayne Loxton. On September 1st, 2005, a 6-month-old baby was found not breathing in his crib. He was later pronounced dead. The initial investigation found no visible injuries to the child and little evidence to demonstrate the cause of death. The investigation was at a standstill until Detective Loxton took the investigation over a month later. Through countless hours of interviews and evidence examination, Detective Loxton was able to determine that the child had died due to the neglectful actions of the father. The baby's father was eventually charged with manslaughter. He pled guilty to the crime in November of 2006. Detective Loxton is commended for demonstrating outstanding performance during this difficult investigation that lasted more than a year. The investigation ended with the baby's father, who was responsible for the child's death, going to prison. The next group of awards are life-saving awards, and they're awarded for the saving of human life. They're intended for individuals directly responsible for the saving of human life. First life-saving award is for Communications Officer Mary Herr. On March the 11th, 2006, Communications Officer Herr received a call of a 2-year-old boy that was not breathing. When officers Kerrigan and Fanton arrived at the location, they found that the child was unconscious but breathing. The parents told the officers that their son had fell off a picnic table and hit his head on the cement below, causing him to stop breathing. He eventually turned blue from the lack of oxygen. The parents called 911 and spoke with Officer Herr. Officer Herr instructed the parents on how to give CPR to their child. Neither of the parents knew CPR and credited Officer Herr for helping them save their son's life. Officers checked with the parents the next day and were told that the child was doing fine and in good health. Officer Herr is commended for her actions which helped save the life of a young child. The next life-saving award is for Communications Officer Lisa France. On August the 20th, 2006, Communication Officer France received a 911 call from a woman who said her 1-month-old baby was choking and could not breathe. Officer France stayed calm and used her emergency medical dispatch training to give instructions to the woman. Officer France told the woman how to clear the child's airway by using back blows and abdominal thrusts. The woman applied the techniques as she was instructed and was able to open the baby's airway. The child's breathing was restored, saving the baby's life. The baby is now doing fine. Communications Officer France is commended for her part in saving a human life. The last life-saving award is awarded to Officer Karen Brisby, Sergeant William Trout, EMTs Timothy Niggemeyer and Rhonda Adams. On August 29, 2006 at 11:28 a.m., Officer Brisby and Sergeant Trout from the Marysville Police Department responded to a suicidal subject call in one of the Golden Crest apartments. On arrival, the two officers were met at the door by the caller, who stated the distraught woman was threatening to burn the building down. Officer Brisby and Sergeant Trout went into the bedroom and attempted to talk to the woman. When they got in there, they smelled smoke, so they forced the door open. Once inside, they found the smoke was getting worse and the woman had now locked herself in the bathroom. Officers then tried to force the bathroom door, but the woman was blocking it with her body. They did get the door partially open, and when they did, they observed smoke and flames coming from the bathroom. While this was occurring, EMT Niggemeyer went to his EMS rig and retrieved the fire extinguisher. He then extinguished the flames through a small gap in the door that was being maintained by the two officers. Smoke was billowing out of the bathroom at the time, and the rescuers had to momentarily retreat. They returned, and Sergeant Trout and EMT Niggemeyer pulled the now unconscious woman out of the bathroom. EMT Niggemeyer and Adams rendered aid to the woman and transported her to the hospital for treatment. These officers are commended for their action, which saved the woman's life. And the last award for the night is a Departmental Commendation Medal. It's awarded to individuals for outstanding performance of a difficult task involving personal risk to the individual's safety. Because of the individual's action, a life is saved, a serious crime is prevented, or the perpetrator is apprehended. This Departmental Commendation Award is awarded to Officer Doug Decker. On March 20th, 2006 at 3:35 p.m., officers were dispatched to an alleyway behind 1512 16th Street for a suicidal woman armed with a knife. Officer Decker arrived on location and observed the woman inside a vehicle. The subject's mother was outside the vehicle, reaching in, trying to stop her. Officer Decker pulled pulled behind the vehicle, and as he did, the woman put her vehicle in reverse and struck the Officer Decker's patrol car. Officer Decker exited the vehicle and ran to the aid of the mother, who was struggling with and screaming at her daughter. As Officer Decker approached, he observed a knife in the left hand of the woman. Officer Decker reacted quickly and decisively and was able to disarm the woman. He was then able to gain control of the disturbed woman and took her into protective custody. Officer Decker risked his own safety to prevent injury to a suicidal person and to her mother, and is commended for his bravery. Chief Corbett.
I think, as you ladies and gentlemen can see, both from our citizens and from our officers, that there is a tremendous feeling of cooperation in our community and a great deal of esprit de corps among our officers. Just this past weekend, the officers demonstrated that again. We had an individual commit several very serious felonies, shot a house up, and the officers worked all weekend long, the detectives and the uniform officers, as a cohesive force to solve the crime. We now know who the individual is, and I think momentarily that individual is going to be in custody. It doesn't happen accidentally. It happens through training, through dedication, and hard work. We're living in perilous times, and I think without concerned citizens, helpful, supportive citizens, and hard-working, dedicated officers, we can't accomplish these kinds of things that make our community a better place to live and to work and to recreate. To honored guests and families, we thank you for coming to recognize and honor all of our award recipients. They have unselfishly contributed to the furtherance of law and order and to the continuing preservation of tranquility in our community. On behalf of the Port Huron Police Department and the City of Port Huron, we collectively thank you for attending our annual awards ceremony. I think that I'm probably going to write up citations for the lieutenant and the captain for fitting this all in 50 minutes. They did a rather remarkable job. Please join the award recipients, the promoted officers, the awarded officers, and our newest, please join the award recipients and all those who received awards. Thank you very much for coming.